Hello and welcome to this episode 6 of the Amateur Hour podcast. My name is Adam Thomas. I wanted to go over what I've seen of Star Trek Picard. I've seen up through episode 6 now. I wanted to talk a little Star Wars news. I wanted to give my comments on a big GameStop rumor. I've got some video game news, and I wanted to give my impressions of a Final Fantasy VII demo. Get ready to listen to some assholes talk about random crap on the internet. I've always been a big lover of sci-fi, and Star Wars and Star Trek have kind of been the cornerstone of my love of the genre. But I can tell you, with everything that's been going on, it has sorely tested me on both of these franchises. Now, I've watched Star Trek Picard. In fact, episode 0 of this podcast was covering the first episode of Star Trek Picard. Since then, I've gone back, I've watched the first 6 episodes up through The Impossible Box, and I wanted to give my impressions so far of the entire series that I've seen. Ooh, where to even begin? I'm not as angry at Star Trek Picard as other members of the fandom menace, but nor do I think it's a worthwhile successor to Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Voyager, or even Enterprise. The best way I can describe it is that it's the Stargate universe of the Stargate series. You took a franchise that had very successful television shows, that had a good feel, that had deep characters, adventure and excitement, and you kept some of it, but mostly you changed everything that made Star Trek great. I look at this show and I think maybe this show would work if it wasn't Star Trek. The same way I looked at Stargate Universe at that show and said maybe this show would work if it wasn't Stargate. It just doesn't feel like the franchise that it's representing. Were there good points in Star Trek Picard? Yes. Yes, the show is not a complete dumpster fire. It does have parts in it that were good. There are parts that were exciting. There are parts that felt like Star Trek. But the parts that don't, the parts that clearly don't belong in Star Trek, the parts that feel shoehorned in. So what are some things I like about Star Trek Picard? Well, I like that it's a saga. I like that each episode builds on the episode before it. A lot of early Star Trek, the original series, Star Trek The Next Generation, the first bit of Deep Space Nine, large swaths of Voyager, and even parts of Enterprise, they were all very episodic. You could watch them in almost any order, and it would make perfect sense. I don't necessarily like that kind of storytelling. It does have its place, I suppose, with like sitcoms and stuff, but for fantasy and sci-fi, I prefer epic storytelling that can only be told in these saga formats. So that's good. I very much enjoyed that the story continues to build off of itself. I like that there's some suspense and action in the show. There were too many episodes of Star Trek where the conflict was so minor and the adventure was so basic that there was just not enough suspense, not enough action, not enough excitement to really draw the story forward. And that's one of the reasons I like Deep Space Nine so much. It just had a much more exciting feel than The Next Generation. And some of my favorite episodes of Star Trek have dealt with conflict. So the show does have that going for it. I do like that the show at times feels like Star Trek. There are some callbacks, such as the old Romulan theme being played in the show, the old TOS Romulan theme being played at times. There are some callbacks with like 7 of 9 showing up in the series, and several other lesser Star Trek characters having major roles in the series, such as Hugh. And the show kind of gives an opportunity to have that, I wonder whatever happened to this random 1 or 2 time character that just sort of came in, did their thing on Star Trek, and was never heard from again. That is very positive. I like how they kind of go explore some of these minor characters. But the negatives far outweigh the positives in the show. Whenever I start getting into the show and start feeling like I'm watching Star Trek, inevitably it does something to take me out of it. One thing are all the plot holes, all of the problems, the things in the show that don't make sense and are never explained. Such as when Picard is trying to put his crew together, one of the Romulans that works for him mentions, well, why don't you go get Riker, Worf, LaForge? We're never really given a reason why these people aren't seriously considered for this mission. Sure, Picard gives some kind of offhand comment like, they would just do it out of loyalty to me, and, well, hasn't he considered they might do it out of loyalty to Data? If he were to bring this information to them, Riker, LaForge, Worf, even others, O'Brien, all of these people served with Data for years. Even people that didn't know Data that well may volunteer to assist what is his legacy in a way. And even if none of that, certain people might agree to go along just because what's happening with the Romulans and with new synthetic life forms is worth investigating. So I don't agree with that. It seems foolish that Picard would not even tell anybody about what's going on. Surely people like Riker and Worf would believe him. And we all know the real reason the characters can't be there, but for the show they need to come up with another reason other than just, oh no, they might follow me on this adventure just because they're loyal to me. That's not a strong enough answer. He should have followed up with, these people are retired, they're old, they deserve to enjoy their retirement, I'm doing this. Maybe you might have that argument, then I would say you should let them know because they need to make their own decision. Another thing that I've heard heavily criticized is how 7 of 9 wasn't acting like herself. And in one instance in particular, I'm going to try not to ruin anything for anybody that hasn't seen the episodes, but there has been some controversy over the way that 7 of 9 behaves. And for that I say, it's been 20 years. It's not so much it's a problem with the show, it's a problem with any show that has a time skip like this. Surely people can change and change quite a lot in 20 years. So her actions don't necessarily conflict with the person that we saw before because so much time has passed. The issue is that we haven't seen how that time has affected her. We are hinted at with a few scenes that show that things perhaps haven't been going so great for her and that she has suffered some losses, but it is a shock going from the 7 of 9 that we saw at the end of Voyager to the 7 of 9 that we see in Star Trek Picard. We did need more time to know what happened to this character, how she got involved with the people that she's involved with, what went wrong and what led her on the path that she decided to take. It's not unrealistic to believe that 7 of 9 has changed that much. It's just we as the audience didn't get to see it. The last we saw of 7 of 9, she had reclaimed her humanity. She had apparently fallen in love with Chakotay, and she had just returned to Earth with Voyager's big triumph, with the board being, if not destroyed, at least crippled. The character has clearly changed, and perhaps rightfully so, but we as the audience don't get to see any of it. We just see that the character was one way, then the next time we see her, she is another way. And that's the inherent problem with a 20-year time skip. There's no way for us to go back and see what changed the character. There's no way for us to know from this one episode everything that the character's been through. So that isn't necessarily a flaw with Star Trek Picard. That's a flaw with taking a character forward 20 years, changing them drastically, and then not giving us the full backstory as to why that character changed so much. And that not making sense is one of the things that really pulls me out of the show so much. There'll be things that happen that maybe with some further explanation could make some sense, but just don't. And there's never any kind of explanation given as to why we as the audience should just accept what we've just seen. For example, at one point in the show, someone dies, and the emergency holographic medical program that had been almost... I'm not sure if they meant this to be a joke, but he's always appearing at the least little thing asking, "What's your medical emergency? What's wrong?" He seems to be everywhere at the smallest thing that happens, popping up, almost begging for something to do. Here you have someone that has died, and the emergency medical hologram is deactivated, but then never tells anyone what happened, never explains to anyone, hey, this is what happened, I think you should be aware of it. It doesn't happen. Nobody questions the death. And it doesn't make any sense for the EMH to be so intrusive one moment and then completely gone the next. It's just a plot hole that is desperately screaming for an explanation. And when I saw this, I was like, okay, why was he... I understand he was deactivated and he couldn't save this person, but at the same time, he's been up in everybody's face asking them, can I help you? Your blood pressure is slightly elevated. You're under stress. What's wrong? He just appears and is annoying, and then suddenly when he's actually needed, because the plot needs him to be absent, he's absent. So it just... little things like that just pull me out of the episode. One of the biggest problems that I have with Star Trek Picard is that it takes so much time to do nothing. There are these big swaths of the show that don't matter, that could be taken out and used for explanations of these things, to explain why things are the way they are, how characters have changed, to have more dialogue in there to explain some of the things that we're seeing. Yet Star Trek Picard wants us to be concerned with who's in love with who's sleeping with who has what relationship with who. It very much reminds me of Stargate Universe, where large portions of the episode are devoted to what I can only say is teen drama, is teen who's banging who, what kind of thing is going on, oh my god, they're sleeping together. This never was involved in Star Trek. Now, in Star Trek, did people get together and have relationships and have romance and have flings? Yes, but it was never the main focus of an episode. It was always something that was kind of maybe going on in the background, and there weren't too many episodes that were based around, who's sleeping with who and stuff. For the most part, the episodes were based around the conflict. This show keeps wanting to pull us out of this narrative and start wanting us to care about people's personal lives and wanting us to go, oh no, they're getting together, they're sleeping together, and blah, blah, blah. We don't care. That's pulling me out of the show. That's pulling me away from the political drama, the mystery, the what's going on, discovering everything, to care about if this person and that person are sleeping together. I just don't like it in that time, to which there are big portions of certain episodes that are just completely wasted on watching these characters interact and doing a will they, won't they, as opposed to explaining what happened to this character, why this is going on, why we should be interested, why this person changed so much, here's resolving some plot holes from before. Large portions of it are just wasted. And I think that is what draws me the most out of Star Trek Picard. I can accept that things in the galaxy have changed. I can accept that ships don't look the way I want them to look. It has been 20 years. The Federation, we haven't seen a proper, currently used main Federation ship. Yes, we had some flashbacks of the shipyards and the fleet being built, and it did look like Star Trek Discovery type of ships, which was terrible. It should have looked like normal Star Trek ships. But you could say, they were using old designs. They pulled ships out of mothball. They pulled ships anywhere and were building and retrofitting ships and doing everything they could to build this fleet and assemble this fleet. So you could kind of write it off as, we're building these ships as fast as we can using old designs because screw it, it's easy and it's fast, as opposed to building brand new state-of-the-art ships that are just going to be used to try to ferry people back and forth. We haven't yet run into a starship of the time period that Star Trek Picard takes place in. Will it look like a proper Federation ship? Oh, I hope so. I hope it doesn't have this crappy Star Trek Discovery weird designs that we've seen. It probably will, but we can still hope to see something that looks like something that takes place after the Sovereign, after the Akira, after the ships that we last saw in Star Trek. That's a natural progression of Starfleet design. But instead of addressing these problems, they think that it's more important for us to have the will they, won't they moments instead of having a few extra lines of dialogue in there and Picard saying, yeah, we were putting this fleet together as quickly as we could. We just pulled some designs out of the old Federation database and started building ships as efficiently as we could, not really caring about the age of the design. I mean, it all could have been explained in a few sentences, but having somebody stare into the other person's eyes and then turn and then come back and then look and then suddenly kiss and then stop and then have their little angsty moment, that was more important than giving us a cohesive story. And I think that will be the ultimate downfall of Star Trek Picard. Look, Patrick Stewart's not going to be in this show for season after season after season. I think that they will kill off Picard in the final episode of the first season. They'll rename the ship, which I can't even remember the name of. It's so insignificant. They'll get rid of all of the old characters and continue on with their new characters. And in a way, I suppose that's fine. But you can't have a Star Trek show that promises a return to old Star Trek, a return to old Star Trek characters that are loved, and then not deliver it. Star Trek Picard was really sold to the audience as a return to the characters we all know and love, and it is nice that we're getting cameos of them, but it just doesn't make sense that we can't get these characters back and at least some of them tell more stories with. I don't know about you, but I really want to know what happened to characters from Star Trek The Next Generation. I wanted adventure with some of them. I wanted adventure with and to know what happened to some of the characters from Deep Space Nine. There was so much left open from that. It's sad that we've lost some of these actors. In theory, Odo could still be out there. We now know kind of what happened with Seven of Nine, but Chakotay, the person that she was in love with, is never mentioned. We don't know what happened to Janeway. We don't know what happened to Harry Kim. We don't know what happened to a lot of these characters that even if we can't get their roles back, even if the actor is sadly left us and the character can never return, instead of having all this teen angst, we could have some stories, some comments that would at least tell us the ultimate fate of some of these characters. We could have more cameos. Why not have Jake Sisko bump into Picard looking for a story? You know, he wanted to be a journalist. Perhaps he succeeded. Perhaps he became the head of some kind of news network and was unhappy with the way that other reporter handled Picard. Why not have some of these characters show back up? Or at least be mentioned. I understand that you can't have the actors come back. You might not be able to get them under contract and blah, 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 blah. But why not have a line or two here telling us what happened to some of these characters? It would be so simple and so much more rewarding to us, the loyal Star Trek audience, to know, oh, Nog commanded his own vessel and sadly died in this event, or, Odo returned to the Federation, and, there's all kinds of things that you could throw out there to tell us what happened to these characters and give us a little more closure than just the final episode of their series. Yet, as I said before, Star Trek Picard thinks that we're concerned with which one of these characters are going to end up together, and it's just foolishness. The best I can describe Star Trek Picard, of what I've seen of it, is that I won't agree that it's a dumpster fire, but it is a dumpster, and this is how I would describe it. It's a dumpster that someone has lost some jewelry in. Someone has accidentally thrown away some jewelry. And if you want to dive into that dumpster, there is actually some gold in that dumpster. But there's also week-old Chinese food. There's also kitty litter. There's also used diapers and who knows what else. So it's really up to you. The show can be good. There are big swaths of it that are bad. I'm going to keep watching it. It has me interested enough to kind of be interested in what's going to happen next, and just pray that the teenage drama, will they, won't they, angst will be over quickly so we can get back to the actual show. But it's really up to you. Like I said, It's not a dumpster fire, but it is certainly a dumpster. There is gold in it, but it's just a question of how long are you willing to hold your nose to get to that goal. So, Star Wars news. The Star Wars novelization of The Rise of Skywalker is due to come out soon, and thanks to some early copies that were sold at Chicago Comics and Entertainment Expo, some pretty interesting revelations have come out. The biggest being that they have retconned Palpatine in the film. In the novel, it's explained that the Palpatine that we're seeing in the film is a clone body. It is not the original body of Palpatine that was destroyed on the Death Star, that this is a clone body that the soul of the Emperor is inhabiting. Now, I have mixed feelings about this. The movie never really explained how the Emperor survived, what exactly is going on, and frankly, it's a mess bringing back the Emperor at all, especially the way they did. I can't say that I'm happy either with him being a clone. Now, some people will point at me and go, "Ha ha! They did this in Legends, and you love Legends, therefore you must love this as well." You know, I was not a big fan of when they did it in Legends either. I've always said that there are no terrible Star Wars books. There are good ones, there are great ones, there are some that aren't so good, but out of all the Star Wars Legends things that I've read, there's never been anything that I've thought has been absolutely terrible. But out of the Star Wars Legends things that I've read, I will say that 3 things stick out most in my mind as being the worst of those. The worst of the best, if you want to say. The Crystal Star is by far the worst Star Wars novel I've ever read. I would put it right up there with the Disney Star Wars. People in that book just don't act right, they're not written well, and the story is weak. I just didn't enjoy it. And I could do a whole review of that novel. I'm not going to do it now, but I will say that that is the worst Star Wars novel I've ever read. From that, you have The Planet of Twilight, which I didn't think was all that great. It wasn't as bad as The Crystal Star, but, you know, it was still not very good. And up from that, I put as the Dark Empire series. For those of you who don't know, in the expanded universe, which now called Star Wars Legends, there was something very similar that took place. The Emperor returned as a clone, and summarizing a whole lot of stuff in a few seconds, he came back, a lot of chaos ensued. There was a time when Luke joined him and appeared to have fallen to the dark side, and we had an adventure with Luke, Leia, Han, Lando, and the gang got back together to face this resurgent emperor, this clone emperor that had the Emperor's soul in it, very similar to this, and of course a crazy super weapon, and everything ensued, and sure enough, the heroes went out, the Emperor is banished again, and things continue on from there. This sounds very familiar to the plot that is now sort of unraveling with the novelization of The Rise of Skywalker, but I will point out one big glaring difference. Yes, the plots are similar. Yes, the Emperor returned. Yes, I wasn't happy about it then. I'm not happy about it now. But at least in Legends, we had the original characters for another adventure. And as much as I didn't like the series, for the most part, the characters looked, felt, sounded like, acted like their actual characters. Han Solo acted and felt like Han Solo. Luke Skywalker kinda sorta felt like Luke Skywalker. The whole thing with him turning to the dark side was kinda strange, but hey, you know, when he was being Luke Skywalker, he felt like Luke Skywalker. Leia, Lando, all the other ones, you had another adventure, as dumb as it was, with your favorite characters. With The Rise of Skywalker, you have none of that. The premise is dumb, just as it was dumb in Legends, but the characters are not your characters that you knew and that you want to adventure with. Let's face it, Rey is no Luke Skywalker. Poe and Finn are not good characters. None of the characters that we have to go on our adventure with can hold a candle to Luke, Leia, Han, and Lando and the others. There's just no way. None of them can hold a candle to them. So you have a dumb premise with good characters and a decent little adventure. As dumb as the premise was, And on the other side, you have what is basically the same dumb premise, but with terrible characters. So, no, I don't like that they've done this. I wish, really, they should have just left the Emperor dead. I was never a fan of the Emperor coming back in Legends. I'm not a fan of this. They could have just left the Emperor dead and just, I don't know, told a complete story from beginning to end, instead of this each director choosing their own adventure with there being no overall plan or direction or idea what was going on beyond whatever SJW message they wanted to push out on the audience. No, I don't think that it's the same. I think both ideas are flawed and that both premises are kind of dumb. I would still say, given the choice of Dark Empire or Rise of Skywalker, go watch, well, I guess you can't watch, go read Dark Empire all day. I would much rather watch a Dark Empire movie than I would the Rise of Skywalker, but at the same time, neither one of them are strong premises. It's just with Dark Empire, I at least get more of the characters that I love acting like they would act, as opposed to characters I don't give a crap about that just act however the story calls for them to act. It's interesting to know that they're kind of going back to Legends and pulling ideas out of it because their current writing is so weak that they can't pull ideas from, I guess, anywhere else. Maybe it gives some minor hope to the High Republic that maybe they'll go back into Legends and pull some characters and ideas and pull them forward into the new Star Wars canon, and maybe somehow, some way, the dice will fall just right and it'll be a good setting with good characters that'll get us back to Star Wars. But after watching some more videos and freeze-faming the video, and after hearing what Doomcock and some others had to say, and seeing what some of these writers have said on Twitter, if you haven't seen that video, go look up Doomcock's video on the High Republic and the writers that were involved in it, and some of the things that they've done and said on Twitter. And I was not confident before, and I am even less confident now. So any hope that I did kind of rise up seeing some of the artwork and thinking maybe this will be a clean start after looking at Doomcock's video of some of the things that were in the introduction video, some of the things that were written on that whiteboard in the background, going back and pausing it myself and looking at them and saying, oh no, and then seeing what some of these people have said on Twitter, it's just going to be more of the same. Until we can get real writers writing for Star Wars again, we will not have a new expanded universe. We will just have more watered down Disney SJW messaging, and Star Wars will continue to lose relevance until someone at Lucasfilm, at Disney, cleans house and put people that love Star Wars back in charge of Star Wars. I don't know why I've been covering so many business and other weirdo news on my channel. I'm supposed to really be talking about Star Wars, Star Trek, video games, anime, and other fun things, but this just struck me and it struck a chord, so I wanted to talk about it. There's been a rumor going around, and I got it from Polygon and from Review Tech USA, and it looks like it originally came from Camelot331. I've seen a few of his videos. He's interesting for anybody that's really ever worked in retail and had to deal with the public in that kind of way, but apparently one of his sources has reported that GameStop has started a legacy delete program. Now, this comes on the heels of Moody dropping GameStop's debt to junk status. For anybody that doesn't know, GameStop is in serious trouble. They've been struggling. They've been hemorrhaging money. They've been losing money like crazy, which is weird to think about considering that I read somewhere, I don't have the facts in front of me for this, but I read somewhere that most GameStop stores are profitable. And I don't think it was most. I think it was like up in the 80s or 90% or something. It was a lot of GameStop stores are profitable, yet the enterprise as a whole is losing money left and right, and their stock price has plummeted. I think it's trading for less than $5 a share right now, which is crazy considering 4, 5, 6 years ago it was up at like $40, $50 a share. It has just nosedived. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. Some people say that its digital distribution is killing it, and I can see that to some degree. I think GameStop has largely killed itself. They grew too far, too fast, and I honestly think that the upper senior management is taking too big of a piece out of the pie. If what I'm remembering is true and all these stores are profitable, or at least, the vast majority of GameStop stores are profitable, they're losing money, then clearly the issue isn't with the stores, it's with what's going on behind the stores. But I digress. In this, Camelot331 is reporting that one of his sources has told him that GameStop, as a cost-saving measure, is, quote, looking into anyone that is making over $16 an hour or has been with the company over 5 years. So if you've been with GameStop for more than 5 years, or you're making $16 an hour or more, on the heels of a mass district manager layoff, they're looking to cut payroll by cutting their most senior frontline employees. And to this end, Camelot331 noted, his source noted, that they have 5 corporate associates set aside to come through transactions to find some kind of reason to terminate these employees. This is ridiculous. They are doing this so that they can save an estimated of $20 million over 2 quarters. That's 6 months. 2 quarters, they want to save $20 million in 6 months by gutting their senior employees, their senior frontline employees. And the whole theory is, if you've been with GameStop and you're making $16 an hour or more, or if you've been there for 5 years, they're looking at it this way. Say you started with GameStop, you've been with them for, 6 years or so. In that time, they figure you've gotten 5 raises. Maybe you started off at minimum wage. Maybe you started off a little bit better than minimum wage. You've gotten 5 raises. Now you're making, that much more than minimum wage. They want to get rid of those people and bring in people that they can pay less. They can bring in people making minimum wage or right at it to replace them, because they do not see their employees as assets. They do not see their employees as people that can do their job and make them money. They're seeing these people as just cogs in a machine. One customer service representative is just like any other customer service representative. Never mind the years of experience, the success, the relationships that have been built up, the knowledge that they have, how good they are at their job. They're just looking at them as, why pay this person so much money per hour when we can pay this much money to this person per hour? And that is a terrible way of looking at it. This is, frankly, one of the reasons that GameStop is in the position that they're in. This is why a lot of companies are in the position that they're in. I've worked for companies of all sizes. I've worked for major financial institutions nationwide that have hundreds of thousands of employees and trillions of dollars in assets. And I've worked for a lady down the street that it's her and her mom working at a sewing shop, and I've helped her with her books. I've worked for all kinds of companies, and I can tell you that one of the big reasons that major corporations run into problems is because of things like this. They are looking at their frontline employees, the people that deal with the customers, that know their customers, that know their market, and saying, no, you're not important. The senior level executives know what the customers want more than the people that the customers talk to every day. And that's the problem. And the question I have in all of this is, where are the boards of directors? Every company that starts to fail goes through this. I have worked for a lot of companies. I have seen a lot of companies do this, where instead of looking at ways to save money, they start looking at their frontline employees. I have an idea of where you can save some money. Let's pull up and see what these senior level executives make at GameStop. Now, I'm not above paying executives millions of dollars if they are worth it. If executives come in, they do their job, they make the company hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, sure, pay them the millions of dollars they deserve. But when you have senior executives that are there losing the company hundreds of millions of dollars a year, not just not making money, but literally eroding the value of the company, why pay them huge sums of money? I mean, it's not like the executives even have faith in their own work. I wasn't able to find the exact article that Camelot 331 referenced, but in his video, he referenced a video showing that the executive chairman of GameStop just dumped 3,114 shares of company stock. Not even the executive level management of the company believes that they can bring the company back. So why pay them the huge sums of money that they're no doubt being paid? So I logged onto the internet, I pulled up salary.com, and I pulled this breakdown of company compensation to their senior leadership positions. These people are the executive leadership of GameStop, and here you can see their salaries. Now, not all of this in cash, but this is their total compensation for the fiscal year. Now, if you're like me, you're looking at this and going, wow, that's a lot of money. And for executives, yeah, it's a pretty good chunk of change. I've seen executives make a whole lot more than this, but for most people, what you're seeing on your screen here is a lot of money. And by my math, these executives in themselves bring in $23,416,282 per fiscal year. Okay? If I'm the board of directors and I'm looking at these people that have taken my company in a few years and gone from being $50, $40 a share down to less than $5, that have gone from turning a profit and building stores and expanding to firing district managers by the dozens and laying off store employees and closing stores, I'm definitely looking at this first. If I'm losing money as an owner, if I'm part of the board of directors and I'm losing all of this money, why am I paying these top executives to run my company into the ground? It's clearly not the fault of the guy coming in, clocking in, and making a little bit better than minimum wage because he's had years of decent service and he deserves a raise, has gotten a raise. It has nothing to do with him. GameStop is failing because of the decisions its upper leadership has made. If it were a problem with a frontline employee, or even a series of frontline employees, you would see that in those stores. You would see that as an isolated effect. But this is a company-wide problem. This is an issue with the enterprise itself not only not making money, but losing huge amounts of money. So clearly, the biggest issue is not with whether somebody's being paid too much money to ring somebody up at a register. The problem is at the enterprise level. So here's part of my solution as to solving GameStop's financial troubles. As you can see, there are 8 people listed here that make almost $23.5 million in 12 months. That's $23.5 million divided by 8 people. You're really going to tell me that the big problem with GameStop is that somebody that's been there for 5 years is making a couple of dollars an hour over minimum wage? That's the issue? No. If they've been there long enough to amass that amount of seniority and knowledge and understanding and good customer service, bad employees you're going to weed out within a few weeks. Well, terrible employees you're going to weed out in a few days. Bad employees you're going to weed out over the few weeks or a few months. But having somebody there for years, that it means they're at least somewhat competent at their job. There's something that employee is doing that they're doing right to have survived at the company for 4, 5, 6, 7 years and earn those raises. I don't blame those people. We can go through person by person, look at performance, come up with new ideas, but just because somebody's been with the company a few years and earned a few raises doesn't send the company into bankruptcy. No, this is a senior leadership problem, and the senior leadership should be looked at. Just imagine how much money GameStop could save if they just cut these guys back a little bit. If they just said, look, you were hired to do a job and you're not doing it. You're making, the average, if we take all these guys and get the average, you're talking almost $3 million a year per person. Clearly, there's some people here making more than $3 million, some people making less than $3 million. But let's take a look at all these guys and say, hey, no, this is ridiculous. You are failing. We're going to pay you $500,000 a year. If you, instead of paying these people what you're paying them, if you drop them back down to $500,000 per year, which is still a lot of money. Any retail worker would be amazed to make $500,000 in 1 year. But if you just drop them all down to say $500,000 a year, $500,000 a year, that alone would save you almost your $20 million. Now, that over the course of a year instead of 6 months, so go ahead and say that's $10 million. That would save you almost $10 million over 6 months. So half of the total that you want to save by laying off all these people, by committing 5 corporate associates to doing nothing but looking into people's transaction history to try to get rid of them, this entire thing of closing stores, a lot of the problem could be solved right there by cutting executive salaries. Now, do I want the government to step in and do it? No. I don't like to get involved in politics in my channel. I just want to see the boards of directors, the people that own this company, come in and look at these executives and go, no, you are not worth $3 million, $4 million, $2 million, $5 million. You are worth this. You are not succeeding, and you will not be paid as if you're succeeding. It is not the fault of the frontline worker. Stop gutting our workforce to try to save your numbers for a quarter or earn a bonus. Start looking to the future. It will be your workers, your frontline workers, that make you money. It doesn't matter if you are paying your person minimum wage if they're not doing their job, if they're not doing a good job. The people that have been there for those years, that have earned those wage increases, are your backbone of your business. They're the people that know your customer. That your customer comes in and goes, oh, it's you. Even if they don't know the associate's name, they'll look at the person, recognize them, talk to them. They have built a relationship with these people. To just get rid of them and replace them like a cog in a machine is going to be their downfall. This did not work with any of the other companies that tried it. It is not working at Lowe's. It did not work with Best Buy. And it didn't work with Toys R Us. It didn't work with Kmart. It didn't work with Sears. It doesn't work because it doesn't address the problem. It doesn't keep the business up and running and growing towards the future. When you start doing this, you are cutting out your future to try to save a few dollars, and those few dollars that you're saving is going right into the pockets of these executives. Cuts start from the top down. If your enterprise is failing, sure, there could be a systematic problem with your training and with your associates. But if that's the case, guess what? It's still the senior leadership's fault. Why? Because they designed the system. If your employees are not working well, if it is a systematic problem with your employees, then it is the fault of senior leadership for designing that system to encourage those failures. Your change has to begin at the upper levels and work its way down. Gutting your frontline workforce without making changes at the top will accomplish nothing. That money that is saved will be eaten up in senior executive pay and benefits and the same broken system that has led GameStop to where it is. GameStop must evolve. It cannot continue to rely on the model that it's used in the past. It cannot rely on your standard retail model, bringing in t-shirts and toys and games and action figures and other things that are just going to end up in clearance is not the solution to GameStop's problems. GameStop has to become a place where people want to go to spend their money. They may be losing games to digital. Digital may be more convenient. They have to sell themselves as this is where you come to get your games because it is cheaper or it is better or you get a better experience or something. They have to find something to sell to the public that is not merchandise. Continue to carry your used games. GameStop cannot compete with Walmart and Amazon for new games, and their used games are not cheap enough in some instances. Why pay $2 less for an almost new game, maybe $5 less, to get a used disc when you could just pay $2, $3, $4, $5 more to get the game brand new? If you're going to sell the game used, you have to sell it cheap. And GameStop's going to have to figure that out, and they're going to have to start selling people the idea of buying stuff from GameStop because it's GameStop, because you get that interaction, because you get people there that you know, that you build a relationship with, because you want to go to GameStop and hang out, as opposed to go to GameStop and make a transaction. That's how I would want to sell GameStop if I were in one of these positions. And if I sat on the board of directors, I would be looking at these 8 people's salaries and be, if you want to cut payroll, that's where I would start. If these people are willing to throw their frontline people under the bus, well, guess what? The haircut starts with the hair on the top of your head, and it's going to work its way down. If we cut these people's salaries, and we have to cut further than that, then we can start looking at leadership going down. But starting at your front line is never the good place to start. Start with a change of your leadership, change the system, then change your front line. Just changing your front line and going, job done, it will never work. Hey, Camelot331, I've watched some of your videos. I like what you have to say, especially when you go after like GameStop and Amazon and other companies that treat their employees terribly. I've worked in retail. I'm right with you. I know what you go through. I've got my horror stories just like anybody that's ever worked in retail or really any big corporate enterprise can tell you. As I said before, I've worked for big corporations. I've worked for small companies. I've been in accounting, bookkeeping. So I can tell you firsthand some insane stories of corporate greed and some of the way people have treated their workers and the attitudes that they've had. I'll make sure and get in touch with you, but it's really nothing that you've not heard before. Now, I do know someone that might be willing to talk to you. This person has true horror stories of how a major U.S. corporation just does not value its workers. The callousness that they have treated people that have lost their lives, who have died on the job in the facility, and the company just doesn't care, and the trouble that the company has gotten in with law enforcement dealing with some of the ways that they have dealt with these people losing their lives and being horribly injured. It's insane. Some of the stuff would turn you white to know some of the ways that these people have reacted. So I'll see what I can do. This person is a little scared. They don't want to lose their job. They've talked to me some, but I can't betray any trust or anything, but I'll get in touch with you, see if you're interested in some of my much more mundane stories of just your regular everyday corporate greed and some of the dirty tricks that people have pulled. And I'll see if I can't get you in contact with this other person if you're interested in some true horror stories. So in the short time I've got left on this podcast, I just wanted to go over some pretty big things that have come down in video game news. One of them is, of course, our old friends over at CD Projekt Red has created probably one of the most generous refund policies that you can imagine on their distribution of good old games. They are now offering a 30-day refund policy on games. Now, to my understanding, there are some strings attached to this. I haven't done a whole lot of research on it, but just judging from what little research I have done, this is an amazing refund policy. It just shows how dedicated CD Projekt Red is to customer service. I hope that people don't take advantage of this, because with a 30-day refund, if the strings aren't too terribly thick, people could very easily abuse this. I do hope that we do have some decent people out there that'll look at this and go, oh yeah, this is really cool of CD Projekt Red. Look at them and say, yeah, I'm not going to try to cheat these guys. But then again, sure enough, there's going to be some people out there that are like, well, I can beat a game in 30 days, buy it, beat it, turn it back, and just essentially use it as a rental service, even though they're not paying thing for games. I hope that doesn't take place. You know, CD Projekt Red has seen a lot of success. I'm a big fan of theirs with the Witcher series. I was a fan of theirs of Good Old Games. It's been amazing to me to see what they've managed to do with just good old games. They're right up there with the Epic Game Store and Steam. My favorite personally is still Steam, but Good Old Games, I remember when it first came out, and it was just basically a bunch of old DOS games. You know, they tended to sell a bunch of games that weren't really available anywhere else just because they were old, and now they've grown into a major distribution platform, and they're offering tremendous customer service and customer-friendly policies, and I really want them to be rewarded for it. I'm going to check more into this. If there's anything major about it, I might put it in the next podcast, but hey, I still want to give a shout out to CD Projekt Red. Let's have some more good games. Let's have the Witcher Complete series come out on PlayStation 5, and I am looking forward to Cyberpunk, so let's go CD Projekt Red. But of course, with any video game company that gets something right, another one has to get it terribly wrong. Fans of the Dead or Alive series, Dead or Alive 6 is now charging $1 to change your hair color, and it has almost $2,000 in total DLC. So if you were to buy the game and then buy all of the DLC, all of the costumes, all of the accessories, all of the things that you can get for DLC, that means that the game is going to cost you $2,000. That is ridiculous, especially for a game that is mostly fan service at this point anyway. I haven't looked too much into Dead or Alive 6. Honestly, I was never a big fan of the Dead or Alive series. I think I played Dead or Alive 1 and 2. I don't remember if I ever played 3 or 4 at all. I think I played some of Dead or Alive 1. I played a little bit of Dead or Alive 2. And I played a little bit of that first Dead or Alive beach volleyball game. I never played the second one or the third one. It's fine. I mean, it's a good enough series. I'm not going to rag on the series itself. I haven't played it enough to know. It's just I'm not a big fan of 3D fighters. I can't give you a big review of Dead or Alive, but I know there's a lot of people out there that like it and like it for a fighting game, like it for the eye candy. I can't really blame you for either, but this level of monetization is just bullcrap. It's one thing if you come out with a good game and then you want to support it with some DLC. It's another thing to release a game with over $2,000 in DLC. That's just incredible. It's so sad to see after CD Projekt Red giving us such a great refund policy that, as I said in the last segment, that I'd have to look into a little bit more, but then to see this with Dead or Alive with that much DLC, trying to charge that much money for the game and for its little cute outfits for the girls, it's just insane. I hope that the sales of Dead or Alive go down and that they're punished for doing this, that their DLC doesn't do well. I'm sure it'll do well enough to continue. Maybe they'll be kind and eventually release a complete edition of the game for something reasonable, like $40-50 that years later will have all of the stuff in it. Somehow I doubt that, but you know, you can always hope. And hopefully this trend ceases or at least doesn't continue to grow. But it is disgusting to see a company release a game with $2,000, almost just shy of $2,000 in downloadable content. That's just insane. That's completely nuts. So the last thing I wanted to cover real quick was my impressions of the Final Fantasy VII Remake demo. I downloaded it, I played it a couple of times. There's really not much to say. It's great. It's Final Fantasy VII. It looks like Final Fantasy VII. All of the characters are beautiful. It's almost like watching a movie. There's been some controversy over that it's not turn-based and it's not more like the Final Fantasy VII that we all know. Would I have liked a turn-based Final Fantasy VII game? Yeah, sure. But I've kind of come to the conclusion, I've come to accept that the turn-based JRPG Final Fantasy games of old are gone. Their time has come and gone, and we're now in the action RPG space, and it's going to continue that way for the foreseeable future. It's been since, the last one was Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy X-2, somewhere around in there was the last of the Final Fantasy turn-based combat system games. Ever since Final Fantasy 12, we've had this action kind of quasi-based game, and the 7 remake doesn't do anything to change that. I've just accepted that. And honestly, it's fine. It's exciting. It's interesting to play. It does its job. Had we gone back to being turn-based, I don't think the game would do as well. Too many people are used to the action RPG elements of it, and I think that going back to turn-based would turn off far more people than it would turn on. Us people that are fans of the turn-based, that are fans of the original Final Fantasy, the old Final Fantasy series, chances are we're going to buy the game and we're going to get at least some kind of enjoyment out of it. However, if they had done it the other way and made it turn-based, there's a lot of people that are a fan of the more action-based that would not buy the game. So I think it was the right decision. The gameplay is smooth. It's wonderful. All the character models are beautiful. There was a few things in it that I really liked. You know, ever since the original game came out when I originally played Final Fantasy VII, I wanted more reaction from what was going on from the bad guys. You know, you had some interaction with the bad guys, with the main villains, but I meant more your rank and file bad guys, such as in the bombing mission. I always turn to my fellow fans of the game and I was like, you know, shouldn't those guards that were guarding, you know, Reactor 1 when Cloud and Barrett and the others show up, when they see Cloud, shouldn't their reaction been like, oh shit, why is Soldier attacking us? What's going on? Oh my god, you know, what's happening? Shouldn't they have been really confused? Because Cloud is wearing a Soldier uniform. Not to spoil a 20-year-old game or 25-year-old game, something like this. Anyway, not to spoil a game that's however old. I think over 20 years old at this point, 23 years old, whatever. However old it is, not to spoil any part of the game, but, you know, Cloud is wearing a Soldier uniform, whether he's Soldier or not, carrying a big-ass sword and casting spells. Shouldn't someone have been like, they're not in on what's going on, they're just your rank-and-file soldier, or trooper, I guess I should say, that they're rank-and-file troopers, whereas these elite soldiers are at least known of. I mean, shoot, in Crisis Core, they were famous. So shouldn't some of these guys be like, help us! Soldiers attacking us! Why are they attacking us? Help us! Ah! You know, like, shouldn't they have been losing their shit that this elite soldier is attacking them that's really supposed to be on their side? I always kind of question that, and it was really cool because in my first playthrough of it, one of the soldiers said, it was hard to hear him over what was going on, but he essentially said something to the effect of, it's an operator from Soldier, or something to that effect. They made reference to, they believed that Cloud was a member of Soldier, and that was just awesome. After me talking about it for so long with my friends, and then for somehow, some way, for Square to seemingly pick up on that conversation and put what I always said into the game was just awesome. Now, was it perfect? No. You know, there were parts of it that could have been done better, but for the most part, it was great. One big thing that I had, and I guess I'm going to spoil the demo at this point, so if you're interested in playing the demo, stop right now, because I'm going to tell you what happens at the end of the demo. Alright, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler. Okay, here we go. At the end of the demo, you complete the bombing mission. What I didn't like is that the bomb didn't destroy the reactor. In the original game, you set the bomb, it goes off, the reactor's destroyed. In this one, Shinra destroys the reactor. The bomb explodes, it damages the reactor. President Shinra is watching on a security camera, and Shinra destroys their own reactor. Now, I know what they're going to do with this. They're going to say that Shinra's been planning this from the beginning to blame all of this on Avalanche and everything, and that's cool, but at the same time, I didn't think that was necessary. I did think that the implications was funny. It came to me when I saw that scene. I thought it was funny because the bomb failed. And when I got to thinking about it, what made me kind of chuckle to myself was, okay, it was Barrett and the others that probably got this bomb. Where did they get the bomb, or where did they at least get parts for the bomb? They went to that market at the wall. So they literally got a bomb from Walmart and the bomb failed. That just made me laugh internally, just to think they're using a Walmart brand bomb and the bomb failed. That just, I'm not sure if that's what Square Enix intended excited? Probably not. But to me, to see that just made me laugh. It was funny to myself. A kind of internal joke there that Barrett and the others were using a Walmart bomb and it failed to blow up the reactor. You know, I would have preferred the bomb to go off and the reactor be destroyed and everything and not have Shinra sabotaging their own facilities. But other than that tiny nitpick, few other things even smaller than that, it was a wonderful demo. I am looking forward to playing this game. The game that I'm still looking forward to the most this year is Cyberpunk, but I gotta say, this is probably number 2. Final Fantasy VII was never my favorite Final Fantasy. It's my third favorite Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy VI is still my favorite. Final Fantasy X right under that. Final Fantasy VII right under that. And then you got some kind of leeway on what comes after that. But those 3 are my favorite. But looking at this Final Fantasy VII has me excited to play the rest of the game. I hope that the entire game lives up to the promise of this demo. Not just part 1, not just what we're getting right now, but that Square lives up to their promises, completely remakes the game beginning to end, and that the entire game lives up to the promises that this demo has made. Well, guys, I've gone way over time this time. I guess I'm going to have to leave my continuing thoughts on Kingdom Come Deliverance and those animes that I was talking about until next time. It's just been a busy couple of weeks with all the news that's been coming out and finally getting able to sit down and watch the rest of Star Trek Picard. Next week, we'll be talking about my further thoughts on Kingdom Come Deliverance. I'll be going over some anime that I've been watching and probably some more Star Wars, Star Trek, and gaming news. So, thanks again, guys.